Before this video starts, the setup is slightly different than the one I usually use, so I want to know if you guys think it looks better or worse. Just let me know in the comments quickly. After you watch the full video, like, subscribe, all that nonsense. Now enjoy the video. Oh hello, I've now played 6 God of War games in a row, so I'm already, understandably, a little burnt out. And this is the last game we have to look at. But there was one small issue, is that this game did not want to be played. See, I own this game digitally and physically, but this physical copy in my hand right here doesn't fucking work. If you put it in the PS3, it just never starts up. So I decided, alright, fuck it, I'll download it digitally. The issue with that is that it is 35 gigabytes, and on a PS3, that means deleting pretty much your entire system's library. And even after pretty much doing that, it still wouldn't let me download it, even though I had well over 50 gigabytes of free space on my PlayStation 3. So I had to buy the game online and wait for it to arrive. But then, a day after I did that, I found the game was being sold by a street vendor near the place where I work. All for a game that I think is okay at best. Get ready for a short video, guys! With the mainline trilogy of games wrapped up, there was still one more trip to Greek myths left. It was always clear that the series would continue even after the third entry. Ghost of Sparta was being developed alongside it, and 2011 and 2012 would have talks and rumors of a fourth entry that would feature online multiplayer in some form. Because Kratos killed all the gods, so who's gonna stop us from doing stupid shit? When the game was announced, we all saw that it was not God of War 4, but instead another prequel, this time set way before the events of even Chains of Olympus. In some places, it actually looks better than God of War 3 in my opinion, like Kratos' model for example. And it even had multiplayer! I remember seeing a Super Bowl commercial for this game that still holds up as one of the best game trailers in my eyes. Not because it really does anything special, I think it's just the idea of a franchise I love being shown alongside the Super Bowl is pretty cool. And besides, I like the PS3 era of commercials, though less PS3 baby and more that one about Michael. The game starts by explaining that the Furies are the beings that punish those who break their oaths. So when the game starts for real, we see Kratos captured by them, and the first hour is him trying to escape and even killing one of them. Then we're taken back 3 weeks, which reminds me of how God of War 1 opened with the scene before flashing back. But that scene was like 20 seconds, this is an hour. And not only that, but the game cuts back and forth between Kratos' escape from the Furies and how he got there in the first place, which kind of fucks with the pacing. I get why they'd use this as an intro, it's an amazing boss fight and set piece. But wouldn't it have been cooler for all of these sections to be at the end as one massive climax? All this does is make the story a little harder to recount because when it would switch, I'd have forgotten what was going on in the other part. I'll try to recount the story in chronological order based on what I remember because as much as I think this game does a lot of interesting things with Kratos as a character, I think the story is overall kind of dull. Kratos is in his home when a shadowy figure appears and tells him that his mind is deceiving him, and he gives him a ring that reveals that his house is actually in complete disarray. He tells Kratos that he can help him free his mind from the delusions and help him break his oath to Ares, so Kratos begins his search for an oracle to help him. When he arrives at her temple, he finds that guy from Total Recall is there and he's trying to kill her. As she's dying, the oracle tells Kratos to find the Eyes of Truth, so he goes to do that. She also tells Kratos that Ares planned to turn him into the perfect warrior, so he could challenge Zeus, which is why he wants to have him back so badly. Also, the shadow guy named Orcos became the keeper of that oath, but started questioning the Furies when Ares had Kratos kill his family. To be fair to the game, I'm making it seem a lot more disjointed than it really is, but this is kind of how I remember it because a lot of this game's main plot just kind of throws stuff at you, and sometimes it works, and if you think about it, it works. But it's 1 in the morning, and I've been recording a lot today, so I'm not exactly in the best state of mind to be describing this game's story. At some point, it's explained that Orcos is the son of the oldest Fury and Ares, originally planned to be Ares' champion but was too weak, so the Furies used him to keep oaths. I don't remember when it's explained, but it's important. Kratos goes to find the Oracle's eyes where he's ambushed by the Furies and saved by Orcos. He explains that he and the Oracle tried to warn Zeus about Ares being a dick, but the Furies took the Oracle's eyes, which is why Kratos is looking for them. But he's soon captured after getting it. This is where he breaks out, starts killing the Furies while resisting their illusions and temptations to try to convince him to go back to being Ares' servant. Kills them, then returns home, where Orcos tells him that to truly be free of his bond with Ares, Kratos will have to kill him. Kratos reluctantly obliges, and doing so causes his nightmares to start. The game ending with him seeking the gods' assistance and starting his servitude to them. Man, this story's kinda boring. The only interesting parts are a few moments where Kratos acts differently than he would in the other games, almost as if this game takes place years before them. We see Kratos admit that the idea of breaking an oath to a god is suicide, showing that he has some respect for their power, which is pretty much gone by literally the next game in the timeline Chains of Olympus, but that doesn't matter. He doesn't want to kill Orcos at the end because he doesn't want to hurt any more innocent people, and there's this one scene where a spear gets thrown and Kratos pushes some guy out of the way, which even in God of War 1, where he's the least dick-like, he still wouldn't have done that, so they're cool moments. But other than that, it's just another game that throws immortal beings at you so that you can kill them. And even the Orcos thing is a little questionable because while yeah, we've seen Kratos kill former allies in previous games, they've always done something to provoke him into doing it. They've always crossed him in some way. Orcos was always on his side, and was so on his side that he had to convince Kratos to kill him in the first place. So while it's still a good moment for Kratos and does show how far he falls, it's really not really comparable. If anything, it kind of reminds me of Pandora and how Kratos didn't want her to die so that he could get to Pandora's box in God of War 3. I understand the desire to try and keep some of that hype that the stakes of God of War 3 had, but this is not only not the finale of the series, but years before that. Sure, Kratos is a demigod, but he doesn't know that yet. It would have been refreshing to see him take on something that's a bit more fitting for him as a mortal. He's taking hits here that slowed him down even when he was a full-on god. Sure, his model has scars on it to represent that he's more vulnerable, but I can't help but feel like a more grounded story would have been a bit refreshing. I appreciate this game giving some level of consequence to Kratos abandoning his oath to Ares, but this still just feels kinda generic. Kill whatever's in front of you without the build-up that God of War 3 had. How about having Kratos make a deal with Ares that in order to break his oath he'll have to kill another of Ares' champions? Why just have one champion when you could raid Olympus with an army? That way, the conflict stays at the mortal level while giving you a potentially great villain or rival as another person that Ares saw great potential in, just like Kratos, someone that could have been in Kratos' shoes. I don't know how well it would work, but the idea of having a story where Kratos is still dealing with the stakes of mortals and not gods just sounds refreshing, and I kinda wish they went with that, even just for the sake of experimentation. Now the gameplay, well, it's God of War Ascension. They didn't fuck up the gameplay, but they did fuck it. Let's start with the rage meter. In this game, hitting enemies with the blades fills up this meter and getting hit drops it. Problem 1. This is what combos look like when the meter isn't full. In order to do the full combo that has been unchanged since the very first game, 5 games deep now, had the same combo unaltered. So in order to do that combo, you need to keep this meter full, which is easier said than done. Because of problem 2, there are abilities that take meter, and because of how easy it is to lose it, you'll be wanting to use them pretty much as soon as your meter is full, so you'll basically never see the full combo or any of the multiple moves that are also mainstays that are locked behind the rage meter. In other shitty changes, you only have the Blades of Chaos as a weapon. It just comes in 4 flavors: Fiery Cherry, Tropical Freeze, Electric Sting, and Purple. Sure, there are slightly different special moves and a different finisher light attack, but this is pathetic for a full-length game. Both PSP games had at least one other unique weapon, but this game just had to be cute. Instead of a grab, circle is instead a physical attack that can disarm enemies and you can grab their weapon. There's like 5 I can remember: sword, spear, sling, heavy hammer, and shield. I never really used the heavy hammer or the shield, so really there's 3. Now I actually like this mechanic, but it just doesn't add enough variety to make up for the lack of main weapons. These sidearms can't even be upgraded. And speaking of upgrades, you need to fully upgrade each element to use their magic ability. In fact, Only Fire has its magic and rage ability unlocked from the start. Sure, you get all of them fairly early and upgrading them is really cheap, but it's still pretty bland. And this is a full-length game. Having limited weapons and magic options was fine in the PSP games, those were like 4 hours long. How come those games have more unique weapons and abilities and this game doesn't? At least it had pretty decent items. I appreciate how all three not only have combat use, but they're also part of the puzzles in the game. You know, giving them some more use outside of just a thing that you have. Like the Head of Helios, I never use the Head of Helios. So, it's nice to make sure that you're guaranteed some mileage out of all of these by them being part of puzzles. I get about as much uses out of these three as any of the other items in the other games, but it still doesn't take away from how dull this game can feel at times. And I haven't even started talking about the climbing, you know, the most boring part of Uncharted. God, it feels like there's just so much more climbing in this game compared to the other games. Maybe because they're set up like Uncharted, games with ledges to grab instead of walls you could freely climb on and slide down. At least the set pieces are kind of cool. Yay. But it's obviously the game is nothing like Uncharted. It's God of War, but there is so much of Uncharted's DNA just forced into this game when it didn't need it and it doesn't fit. This game doesn't really do anything special, and the unique things it does too are to the game's detriment. This game is often considered the bad one of the God of War series, and while I think it's much better than a lot of people give it credit for, you know, even with all the worst changes in mind, it's still God of War at the end of the day. It's still decently fun throughout the whole thing. It's hard to disagree that this is a few steps behind a lot of the other games. It's worth playing, but after 5 games, it's fair to expect it to be a little better, a bit more interesting. Sure, mechanically and story-wise it is more interesting than say Chains of Olympus, but this game is also twice as long. Alright, I wanted to do this for the other marathons I did, but I didn't. So here is my totem pole ranking of all the God of War games that we looked at. Because this is the end of the Greek series, it's the end of the marathon for now. I wish we had a bit of a better game to end on, but that's God of War Ascension. Alright, at the bottom of my totem pole is this game, God of War Ascension. Didn't expect it to be here. I remember it being a little bit better than it was, but maybe it's because I'm marathoning them. It's very dull. Half a step above that is Chains of Olympus, and it is only above Ascension because it is less than half the length. If it weren't for that, it would easily be worse than Ascension, I mean. But just being so easy to get through, I beat that game in one day. Like just 4 sittings within 8 hours and only less than 4 hours of gameplay. It's way easier to jump into that game and beat it than it is this game. So that's the only reason it's above, because if it were like 6 hours, I'd probably like Ascension more. A good few steps above is God of War Ghost of Sparta. It does some cool things with Kratos' character, but at the end of the day, it's just a good game, and sometimes that's all you really need. Nothing amazing, but it's good, it's fun, it's God of War. Then right above that is God of War 1. Honestly, I could kind of interchange Ghost of Sparta and God of War 1. You know, sometimes I feel like that difficulty of God of War 1 is more needed, or sometimes I want something short like Ghost of Sparta. Although I love cheesing God of War 1 with the Infinite Magic glitch. The only game I've beaten on God mode. You know, I've tried God of War 2. There's a video for that of me trying to do God of War 2 on Titan difficulty, and it fucking sucked. So yeah, God of War 1. It's an amazing game, really good story, started it all, highly recommend it. Can be pretty tough, has its bullshit moments, so it keeps it from being that good. On the list, relatively speaking, it's still like a 9 out of 10. And the fact that there are still 2 more games above it is just frankly amazing. Because at number 2, we got God of War 3. It's an amazing finale. It is easily the most hyped game in the entire series. However, I think it just falls short of being the best, because at number 1 is God of War 2. I think it is easily my favorite in the series. I love playing it. I love going back to play it. It's the only game where I've ever done the challenges. I did them on the PS3 version, not the PS2 version, because I swore to never do them again. But it's the only game where I've done the challenges, and I want to one day beat Titan mode. But that shit's just not gonna happen, baby. So that's another marathon done. It's an amazing series, one that I highly recommend playing. All 6 at some point. Don't marathon them like I did, or do, but then stop at Ascension, take a break for a few months, play something else. And then when you're like, hey, I feel like playing God of War, play Ascension, maybe you won't be as burnt out as I was. But playing through all the games makes it kind of sting because the only one that's available on modern systems is God of War 3. All the others are locked on the PlayStation 3. Why is that? They're all amazing games, relatively speaking. It's like an easy, it's basically free money. I mean, sure, I'd bitch about it, but like, I could justify $50 for a God of War collection that has 1, 2, Chains of Olympus, Ghosts of Sparta, and Ascension. That's an easy value to justify. At least port them, like, do something. Especially because these games are mentioned in Ragnarok. Except for Chains of Olympus, funnily enough. But all of the games are referenced in Ragnarok. So why not let people play the games that they're referencing? As another marathon down, Sonic is still going strong, though we're closer to the end of that than I'm willing to admit. But next up is Sonic Unleashed, so subscribe, notifications on to not miss that video. There will be another marathon to go alongside Sonic to, you know, add some variety, because I don't want to give up on Sonic partway through because I feel like I'm not doing enough different stuff. And there's going to be some one-offs, some, you know, other videos. Yeah, there's going to be some other stuff coming. So subscribe to not miss any of that. That being said, thank you for watching this video. I have other videos that you should watch. Other things that I say in the outro. Oh, and I know what you're thinking. Actually, you're thinking, AJ, you forgot to talk about the multiplayer of God of War Ascension. And I'm gonna correct you. I didn't forget. Forgetting is accidental, and that was no accident.